Welcome back to the channel, guys. Mr. H here. Slowly melting. Absolutely gross. It's the hottest day of the year. Jesus Christ. It's just atrocious. Anyway, you didn't come here to listen to me chat crap. We're talking Guillermo del Toro's Hellboy 3. Why it never became a comic book. Why we never saw it. Why it never became a comic book. What's going on with it? So, Guillermo del Toro's Hellboy 3 is an interesting thing to look at because it was something which actually was a collaboration. Hellboy 2 to Hellboy 3 was a collaborative effort between Mike Mignola, the creator, and Guillermo del Toro. They plotted out this whole story. So it's interesting that Mike Mignola chose not to continue the story in both movie form and comic book form. Why? Let's take a look, because Screen Rant managed to interview Mike Mignola. Now, Hellboy creator Mike Mignola explains why he felt it wouldn't have been ideal for Guillermo del Toro's scrapped Hellboy 3 movie to be adapted into a comic book. I can't wait for this. The Hellboy films by Guillermo del Toro do not fit into the typical superhero mold. No, they don't. The title character is a demonic... Well, for starters, they came before the superhero comic book movie mold. That's why. The title character is a demonic monster who fights on the side of justice against paranormal and occult threats, like Wolverine meets the X-Files. Though the character was originally created back in 1994, it was the 2004 movie that truly turned Hellboy into a household name. True, basically no one had heard of Hellboy up until that point. Obviously the fans to one side, but generally speaking no one had. Now it says, well, del Toro's two Hellboy movies were critical darlings that proved to be reasonably successful at the box office, earning a combined $260 million worldwide. They actually all lost money at the box office. They may have recouped some of it in sales, but at the box office they all lost money. They didn't quite reach the blockbuster ambitions for which the film studios were surely hoping. Star Ron Perlman and director del Toro had hoped to return to the franchise with a third Hellboy movie, but those hopes were ultimately dashed with the development of the 2019 reboot. Yes, so Mike Mignola, and this confirms it, had co-written drafts of the Hellboy 3 script, and went on to consult with the reboot once it was decided to take the franchise in a new direction. Now, Screen Rant spoke to Mike Mignola about his work on all the Hellboy movies, including the scrapped del Toro sequel, which was ultimately retooled into the Hellboy reboot. So, with del Toro's film franchise rebooted out of the cinemas, perhaps there's hope the Perlman iteration of the character could get a proper swan song in the form of a comic book. But no. Oh no. No. Many cancelled franchises get additional stories via novels or comic books, such as Smallville, Serenity, and the X-Files, before the comics were made non-canon, because obviously they came back for seasons, things like that. But this was not for Hellboy. Now, Mignola, before we get on to what Mignola says, I think it's to do with jealousy. It's inevitably, that's genuinely what I think it's to do with. I think it's to do with jealousy. So, he says, I think del Toro mentioned it to me once, and I said no. I think, let the comics be the comics. Comics are confusing enough for people. Let's not have two different versions of the Hellboy comic out there. My vote would be to say no. How stupid do you think people are? They can discern the difference between a comic book movie, a comic book, and a comic book movie adaptation comic book. It's not rocket science, Mike. Mate. It's not rocket science. So like I say, I think this is all to do with jealousy. Absolutely. I think it's genuinely to do with jealousy. He just wanted to keep it separate. Because his reasoning doesn't make any sense to me. And also as well, I'll say this, he's now thrown the Hellboy reboot under the bus as well. So if we go to his full-on interview, we learn quite a bit. So obviously promoting the whole Hellboy thing, says while promoting the home video release of Hellboy, Mike Mignola spoke with Screen Rant about his story for Hellboy character, blah 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 blah. We're doing this interview for the home video release of Hellboy. I like doing interviews at different points in a movie's life cycle, but the Blu-ray and digital era is something like last call for me. There's something special about this period of time. So for people who missed out on skip the movie, what would you say to them that they can get on the digital or Blu-ray? There's so much frenzy around the release of a movie and so many people jumping in with opinions, fairly or unfairly. It creates a certain atmosphere, and I think the nice thing is, now that's died down, so there's not so much noise about the movie. Maybe now people can say, now I'll judge it for myself. It did anyway. And it wasn't in theatres for that long. I kept running into people who said, I see you have a movie coming out, I really want to see it. But I had to point out that it had already come and gone. It went pretty fast. Hopefully this is a chance for a lot of people to see it without the frenzy of initial reviews. It's a relaxed time for people to sit down and judge for themselves. Well, that's the case anyway. But what I'm referring to is when he revealed how much he was involved with the project. And his wording was very non-committal about his work on it. He was saying how many scripts and drafts he was sent to consult on, and it was like hundreds and hundreds of versions of the script, and it just kept going on for years, apparently. I'll see if I can find it in this, because I've read it before, but here you go. So, oh, well, it's not here, he's just talking about the parts that were in the movie as a whole. Look, it's interesting. I genuinely think... Oh, here we go. Let's see. It was always going to be the Wild Hunt. It was always going to be that storyline, but you're right. At the beginning, the idea was, how do we go from Del Toro... I'm slowly melting. Del Toro movies to continue into this storyline. Plot-wise, it's always been similar. When the decision was made to reboot, it was really just a matter of saying, well, okay, let's take the Del Toro isms that we put into the original script. Let's take these out, you know... I don't know that there's anything in there that really carries over that's specifically Del Toro. It was more of an effort we made of putting those Del Toro-isms in there. It was easy to take them out. I know that was one of the reasons why Neil Marshall wanted to do the Hellboy origin sequence, even though it was covered really well in Del Toro's movie. He wanted to put his own spin on it, so it was a different version of the Hellboy origin. I was definitely on call. When they sent me the rough breakdown of what they wanted, they got me involved right away. I was there to go, if you're doing Wild Hunt, do this, take this piece from over here and put it over there. All I could do is make this, here we go, here's where he starts to kind of throw him under the bus. All I could do is make suggestions, but as long as they're asking for my opinion, I'll give them my opinion. I was very involved. On this one, I was very involved with the script. It went on for, there were a billion different drafts of this script. In fact, Chris Golden, whom I'd worked with before on novels, he and I worked on a couple drafts of the script somewhere in the middle. And then it went back to Andrew Cosby. He worked on the script, up until filming. We shot for a fortnight in the UK, and then we had a few days in Bulgaria before they started filming there. So basically, I sat down with the producer and with Andrew Cosby, and we went through the script again and made changes. So literally making changes as they went along. Okay, I'll hold my hands up. He's not completely throwing him under the bus, but he is inferring that he was only there making suggestions and they kept shooting him more and more stuff. A billion drafts of a script is, obviously it's an exaggeration, but that's not healthy by any stretch. So look, I don't particularly agree with what he's saying much on any of this stuff. I do feel, you know, inevitably people can discern the difference, Mike, between I really am slowly melting. Between a comic book movie adapted to a comic book to finish it off, and then the normal comic book films. Like, people can discern the difference. It's really a shame when creators and things like that dumb down their audience in their own eyes. Like, that's come from nowhere. You just think people are stupid for the sake of it. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. So I do feel like that's a shame. But I will say this. What do you think? Are you with me on this? Do you think people would have told the difference? I think so. And inevitably, like, how many sales do you think he would have made on that? That would have been an epic comic book. But I think the reason he probably didn't make it, not only is he jealous, but I also think he wouldn't have owned the full rights to it, because it would have been part Del Toro. Money talks, right? He would have earned a lot of money from this movie if it had made profit. So, that's my thoughts. What about you? Let me know down below in the comments. I know audio is good now. Hopefully. Fuck me, I hope it's good. Anyway, let me know your thoughts. Apologies for all this crap, but it's the hottest day of the year. Can't do much about it. I'm slowly melting, but I'm still plugging away to keep you entertained. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you very much for leaving a like and subscribing, because I know you all did. Take care. I've been Mr. H. Peace.